What makes a leader great when everything is falling apart? It's not just about surviving a crisis. It's about turning that threat into an incredible triumph. In this explainer, we're going to decode the playbook of the world's best crisis management CEOs. We're not just looking at what they did, but digging into how they did it.
All right, so let's jump right in. And to really get this, we first have to understand the stakes. Because in a crisis, what's truly on the line is way more than just the next quarterly report. We're talking about a company's most valuable and also its most fragile asset.
Okay, get ready for this number, 44%. So what is that? Well, believe it or not, that is how much of a company's market value executives say comes down to just one thing, the CEO's reputation. Let that sink in for a second. Leadership isn't just some soft skill, it's a massive financial asset. And when a crisis hits, that's the very first thing on the chopping block.
So, when we say crisis, what are we really talking about here? I mean, it's not just a bad news day or the stock taking a little dip.
A real corporate crisis? Well, it's the ultimate stress test for the entire organization. It's that one event that threatens everything. The operations, the reputation, the finances, all of it. But really, it's a moment of truth. It strips everything away and shows you what a company, and especially its leader, are really made of.
So, the big question is, how do the absolute best leaders navigate these make-or-break moments? Well, when you look at how the top-performing CEOs handle them, a pattern starts to emerge, a clear three-part playbook for not just getting through the turmoil, but actually finding an opportunity in it. It all comes down to three things. Number one, act with decisive speed. Number two, communicate with what we'll call radical candor. And number three, rebuild from the inside out. So let's dive into each one and see what they look like in the real world. Okay, first up, act with decisive speed. And for this, we got to look at Mary Barra over at General Motors. You see, in a crisis, speed isn't just important, it's everything. It's the currency of trust. And her response? It was a total masterclass.
Picture this. She barely has her feet under the desk as the new CEO, and bam, she's hit with an absolute nightmare of a problem. A defect in GM's ignition switches that had been around for decades and was linked to at least 124 deaths. This was the kind of thing that could literally destroy the company.
So what did she do? She didn't hide, she didn't delay. Her response was basically a shock to the system, all about accountability. She immediately convened daily crisis meetings. She fired 15 people, including senior executives. She commissioned a fully public, independent investigation, and she recalled over 30 million vehicles. And she didn't send a lawyer. She went and testified before Congress again and again. Her actions were swift, they were huge, and they all had one goal: restore trust no matter what.
Okay, so that's speed. But speed by itself isn't enough, which brings us to our second principle, and you'll see how it builds right on top of the first one: communicate with radical candor. And for this one, there's no better example than Brian Chesky at Airbnb, right when the pandemic hit and travel just stopped.
This quote from him really nails it. He said, "The hardest challenge is managing your own psychology and projecting optimism anchored in reality." You see, it's not just about what you say in a press release. It starts with your own mindset as a leader. And man, was his mindset put to the test. Airbnb's bookings literally fell off a cliff, down 80% in just a matter of weeks.
And this is where you see the difference. The typical corporate response, right? Downplay everything, use a bunch of vague jargon, hide behind press releases. Well, Chesky did the exact opposite. He got out there and shared the worst-case scenarios openly. When he had to do layoffs, he delivered the news himself with real empathy. He held transparent, frequent town halls, and he immediately launched a host relief fund. He chose to be open and vulnerable instead of defensive, and that honesty was absolutely crucial for rebuilding trust. So, you've acted fast, you've been brutally honest, but just getting through the crisis isn't the end goal. The truly great leaders use that moment as a springboard for real, fundamental change. And that brings us to our third and final principle: rebuild from the inside out. And for this, we have to talk about Satya Nadella at Microsoft. Now, Nadella's crisis was different. It wasn't a sudden explosion like the others. It was more like a slow-burning fire inside the company. He took over a Microsoft that had this toxic, know-it-all culture. They were arrogant, they were stuck in their ways, and it was slowly killing the company's ability to compete. His solution wasn't a quick fix. It was a complete cultural overhaul. He basically had to rebuild the company's soul. He famously swapped that know-it-all arrogance for a learn-it-all curiosity. He broke down the internal silos under the banner of One Microsoft.
He shocked everyone by embracing open-source collaboration. He used that crisis of irrelevance to forge a completely new, cloud-first identity for Microsoft.
So, does this stuff actually work? What's the payoff for taking this kind of approach? Well, when a leader really executes this playbook, the results aren't just about survival. They are absolutely staggering.
$100 billion. That was Airbnb's valuation at its IPO, and this was just months after its business had nearly been wiped out completely. That is a direct testament to the investor confidence Brian Chesky built through his radical candor.
And then there's this. Look at Microsoft's market cap. It grew from around $300 billion when Nadella took over to over $3 trillion today. That's a tenfold increase, powered by that massive cultural and strategic rebuild he engineered from the inside out.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? If you boil it all down, what's the one lesson to remember from this entire playbook?
It's this. True crisis leadership is not about damage control. It is about value creation. The best leaders don't just put out the fires. They use the fire to forge something new, to make their organizations faster, more transparent, and fundamentally stronger than they ever were before.
You know, there's that old saying, crisis doesn't build character, it reveals it. So looking at the leaders and companies making headlines today, who do you see executing this playbook? Who would be on your list?